Hello and welcome to episode 4 of All 5 Rounds. I am your host, Ty O'Keefe, and shortly I'll be joined by my co-host, Daren Loucks. Today we're going to talk about, the biggest elephant in the room of all would be the Cyborg Nunez fight. Despite their, main event between Gaethje and James Vick this weekend, it seems that Cyborg and Nunez kind of has eclipsed a lot of that, and rightfully so. We're also going to talk about the lightweight title picture as usual. Any new updates with the Conor Khabib situation? GSP looming once again. Dana White's had some things to say about that. And but before any of that, I'd like to remind you all that this call has been brought to you, or the show rather, been brought to you by Dialogue. If you're interested in starting a show or your podcast, it's a great platform. Go to getdialogue.com, hit host a call, and just get started. All right. So, Daren, are you there?
Here, my man. How you doing?
Oh, fantastic. How are you tonight?
Excellent. Can't be better.
Well, obviously we got to start off with Nunez Cyborg fight being set for UFC 232 on December 29th in Las Vegas. This is a fight that it's going to be for the featherweight title. What do you think? Was this the number one fight to make in all of women's mixed martial arts right now?
Yeah, I think right now you can't top this fight in terms of magnitude, in terms of the skills that both of these fighters have. Cyborg being the biggest name in women's MMA. This is the fight to make. It's another super fight that the UFC is putting together, bringing two champions of two different weight classes together and clashing. If it ever made sense, it made the most sense with this, because I feel like I don't know who else there really is for Nunez to challenge her right now. And of course, Cyborg's list of opponents is always ultra thin.
Yeah.
Competitors.
And you're right. I mean, Cyborg, her career has been plagued by a shortage of legitimate quality opponents. Like I've said before, I really think that Holly Holm was the only time that Cyborg has ever been really tested. She's never been hit hard like that before. Kunitskaya, maybe in 5 years, would have done something, but we saw Cyborg chew through her in March. And I mean, she's a striker extraordinaire. You can't say anything but that about her. But, when Holly Holm tested Cyborg, we saw Cyborg, battle back for the first time, really. I mean, she's the greatest female mixed martial artist of all time, probably. But that was the first time we actually saw her overcome adversity in a fight. And really, and it wasn't even that much adversity. I mean, let's be honest. So, they definitely a fight that's got to be made. But I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen if Amanda Nunez wins that 145 belt? Where does Cyborg go? Because there's absolutely hardly no 145ers to speak of for Cyborg to fight after losing the belt. Would there be an immediate rematch? Would it be the end of Cyborg in the UFC? Or would it collapse the division if Nunez takes that title? Is it going to be bad for the featherweight division?
You know what? You listed several possibilities that I could totally see happening. I mean, if Cyborg, for some, unforeseen reason, I mean, don't get me wrong, Nunez is tough. She hits hard. She stays in the fight, and she loves to bang it out as well. But we just haven't seen anybody who can absorb the shots that Cyborg can put out on person. You talked about Holly Holm, probably the most decorated striker in women's MMA. With her kickboxing and boxing background, and yeah, she offered some adversity, but ultimately, I mean, she couldn't take it as well. So, can Amanda Nunez take it? I don't know. I guess we'll find that out, but it would be surprising if she did. But if she wins, I can't see anything but an immediate rematch, because I think they would almost look at folding that division. If she beats Cyborg twice, I think that would be the end of that division.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I've heard Cyborg say before that she's not going to be fighting much more anyways, regardless of what happens. I could see, if Cyborg wins and maybe, defeats Nunez, or regardless of what happens, this may be Cyborg's last fight. This may be Cyborg's last time in the octagon, which would be a damn shame considering how long it took her to get here.
Yeah.
All the crap the UFC, they built a division around her. We're going to get a big division now. And then they make the mistake of not doing what they did with the flyweights, where the women's flyweight division, where they had a season of tough. They filled up the the women's flyweight division with the tough contestants like Lauren Murphy and Modafferi and Sijara Eubanks and all those great talents, and that's
Right.
great. But still, the entire time, the women's featherweight division has just been empty, and now they're finally going to do a tough season to fill up the division. Well,
Yeah.
none of those fighters are going to be on Cyborg's caliber. I don't care who wins. None of them are
No.
going to come out and be like, the rankings are going to be a joke because it's going to be Cyborg number one, and whoever's number two, it should be nowhere even near Cyborg. So, I mean, or the number one contender or whatever. So, yeah, I think Cyborg needs to win this for the health of the division, but at the same time, we got to admit it. I mean, Cyborg is no longer the future of the women's featherweight division. She's just not. It's just not going to happen. She's going to retire before the talent catches up with her. I
Yeah, you're
mean,
right. That's exactly what is going to happen, and it's unfortunate. Um, you'd think the UFC would have had a bit of a plan, like you're saying, like for the Cyborg and for this division. I mean, if I was the UFC and I was watching a Cyborg fight, would you not be looking at places like Glory Kickboxing? Would you not be looking at women's boxing and
yeah,
see if you could see if there's anybody who's maybe cross training already, and then B, see if you could coerce somebody or get somebody to start at least even thinking about it, and making a fight like that with a talented striker that would challenge Cyborg standing. Now, obviously, you can't train and be ready for the ground, in a year or something to face Cyborg. I mean, she would have a distinct advantage there. But you put a challenger with great striking in front of her, and let's see what happens. Because otherwise, none of these females, like you said, are just in her league. It's just.
yeah,
But yeah,
it's going to take too long. And you know what? That's a very good point you bring up. But she has mentioned an interest in boxing, as is Jose Aldo. But Cyborg has, and she has trained and been training with some. I want to say Clarissa Shields, but I'm going to be wrong by that name. I know it's going to get crucified on Twitter. So forgive me for just forget I said that. But she has been training. She is interested in boxing. She is interested in doing some other things. I know in combat sports. I see her as a coach down the line.
okay.
She's, no matter what her past has said, okay, yes, she's failed drug tests, okay, whatever, fine. She also is somebody who is a victim of her own physical ability because she, did what she did, that's fine. But even without you can say what you want. I don't think that she still would have been able to make the 135 if she would have stayed clean her entire career. I think it's a physical thing where her body just is bigger than that and her frame is bigger than that. And after trying to cut down for so long, your muscle gets so hard after cutting weight so often. And as it, we saw those videos. I don't know if you ever saw them, but of her crying on the floor in the
Yeah.
locker room trying to make weight. Okay, this is a tough woman. All right, this is no exaggeration. This is no bullshit. This chick, if she's on the floor crying like that, why put yourself through that? And then the UFC gets this division, and it's turned into nothing. This 145-pound division. She's basically, being just moved around and fight whoever's willing to sign on the dotted line.
Right.
The Tanya Evinger fight, you got to give Tanya Evinger kudos for a few fights ago for taking her on. Great. But Jermaine Durandamy ran away from her. And, and she's a one hell of an accomplished kickboxer. She ran from Cyborg. And so I'm interested to see, is Nunez really as bad as she's looked? Because remember, Nunez has fallen in the UFC before. She's not bringing a flawless resume into this war that Cyborg is. Nunez has not had that. Obviously, she's had the more recent success, but
Mhm.
she hasn't. She's fallen. I'm looking at right now here just because again I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe obviously she took the belt from Miesha Tate, but and then she hasn't. She's defended every time since. But earlier on in her career, forgive my slow Wi-Fi here. She has some impressive wins, obviously, over Shevchenko and people like that. But she's lost to Kat Zingano and Alexis Davis.
Oh,
And Kat
okay.
Zingano knocked her out in UFC 178. Now, I will say she has progressed and gotten better, just like, Max Holloway, people like that. Losses happen along the way. But she
Yep.
doesn't have the flawless resume that Cyborg has.
Right. And Cyborg has that flawless resume for a reason. You want to talk about her physical abilities and her physical size and the PEDs and that sort of thing. When look, obviously she's failed some drug tests, and we're kind of speculating as to whether she does or doesn't use anything now. But
I think she's clean right now. I really do.
she's clean.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah, and she very well could be. But the problem is that you take those things even earlier on and you take them for an extended period of time and they change you physiologically.
Yeah,
Okay? And so she's a victim of her own physiological assets, but she's also created those assets by doing that. So don't get me wrong, like she's a phenomenal fighter. But I mean, her body size, her strength, um, she can just hit harder than anybody else in the division. And if I'm a female fighter in her weight division, and she's my next fight, and I have to look at the fact that you know what, in some ways I'm unarmed against her because of that physical advantage that she has.
yeah,
It's a very hard fight for fighters to sign up for, especially if they're not even as skilled as her. Which, let's be honest, a lot of them are not.
yeah, yeah. There's a handful of fighters that could stand and trade with somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I would say Joanna Jacek is one of them, but she's obviously much smaller. So she can't be classified as cyborg. If I like to see like Jacek if she could fight, if she was a 135 or 145er against Cyborg, I think they would put on a war. Maybe, like there's some fighters who really just, and then you got someone like Holly Holm too, who will not quit. She was choked out and lost the belt punching in the air. She will not tap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's good or bad. Say what you want about that. But yeah, this is definitely going to be on the radar of everybody from now until it happens in December. And hopefully nothing stops the fight from happening. But moving on, obviously the Conor McGregor Khabib Nurmagomedov fight is something that's kind of hanging over the sport. And finally, it's something, it's like unfinished business, despite the fact that they've never actually fought before. It's something that needs to happen for the division. But I personally am tired of hearing George St. Pierre's name injected into every possible title scenario where he's going to face the winner of this, the winner of that, and da 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 da. And I'm glad Dana White has kind of said, no, this isn't going to happen. But what do you think? I mean, do you think George St. Pierre is ever going to come back and really win a title and defend it? Or do you think he'll come back and do what he did with the middleweight title or what?
Well, George St. Pierre is kind of the type that, well, I mean, he's also said that he wants any fights from now on out to be big paydays and legacy fights, right? It's tough to have a legacy fight unless you're fighting a champion, unless there's some sort of, maybe revenge behind a loss of some sort or something like that, which he doesn't need to do. He's avenged his losses, but I think he does want like a championship fight with the winner, especially or more so if it's Conor McGregor. I know Dana White has said that it's not going to happen, but let's see what happens if GSP's a big draw. Connor's a big draw. Maybe Connor's telling, Dana after this fight with Khabib that maybe he only has a certain amount of fights left. Or maybe Connor goes and says, I want George St. Pierre.
Yeah. See,
And
I
then
can see
everything
that.
changes.
Yeah. I can see that being the case, definitely, because I don't think after this time that Connor's had off, from what I understand, he's fired back up. I don't think he's going to be a one-off. I think we're going to see a Connor getting back to 3 fights a year at minimum. And maybe
I
that's
think
wishful
so, yeah.
thinking. Well, yeah, maybe, and then maybe that's wishful thinking, whatever. Because he's so great for the sport, love him or hate him, he's absolutely great for the sport,
Right.
and he's so amazingly talented. Anybody can flatten Jose Aldo in 13 seconds after
Oh, yeah.
that streak. I mean, come on, I don't want to hear anybody say anything less than that.
Yeah.
But after seeing Mayweather McGregor, nothing's impossible to me.
Yeah.
After that fight happened, now I no longer doubt anything. Dana White also once said women would never fight in the UFC.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't believe
So,
Dana's saying whatever right now, and I think he wants. I think part of it is too is that he wants people to focus on the Conor Khabib fight itself right now.
yeah,
But I don't think for a second if Conor went to Dana and said he wants this fight that Dana would say no way. I think Conor says it because really after Khabib, the biggest money fight should Conor win and beat Khabib. The only one to do after that is Diaz.
yeah, the trilogy bout, yeah, definitely.
And then
Although I have no interest in seeing that trilogy bout because it means nothing to me. You know, like I just don't think it means anything. You know, like it's just. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely
For
right.
entertainment?
Yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, I guess entertainment because you know the build up to it would be great.
Yep.
But you know, and I think we will see the trilogy bout. We will, but I think it'll be another few years down the road when when it's just it doesn't matter as much as it should have. And
Okay.
if we're gonna do it, I want to do it like in the next year and a half. You know, year like after this Khabib fight, then let's do it then. You know, if we're gonna get this done with, you know, they obviously both want to. Tons of people, and I'm surprised honestly that people are that interested in it. But when you set aside what happens in the octagon and you stand them up against each other and their personalities and how they are, and really Nate Diaz was Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor in the UFC in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? He was
Nate Diaz
mean
is a
mugging
big
everybody.
fan.
He was talking smack to everybody. He was,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like everybody hated on Diaz, and he came out. He was, you know what I mean, though, right? Like he was of that cut, you know.
Yep.
So yeah,
No, Nate
yeah,
Diaz is a big star too. He
yeah.
has a big following from the underground days. Him and his brother. Um, I mean, so the thing that the UFC does know, which is why I could see that fight happening sooner than later in terms of like in a year or so. I mean, they hold the two top, I think, pay-per-view buys for the UFC for the entire for their existence.
Well, I
Like
know one of them. Yeah, the rematch I know was big.
the rematch
Um,
was number one, and the
yeah.
number two was I believe the first one.
And let me just say, hats off to Nate Diaz for I wrote an article about this about a week ago. He's remained relevant despite the fact that he hasn't fought in 2 years because he keeps teasing like he's going to get in a fight and then he's not. He's leaving us wanting more without giving us more. And in the meantime, he's raising his price. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
he's totally. This is young cats who want to make some money in this business need to study this, take some notes because this guy is holding the entire MMA fan base and the UFC hostage. And good for him if it works, right? And he's getting his number, and he's not even busting a sweat other than his own workout regimen. He hasn't had to fight. He's been think about how many fights he's been connected to. He's apparently been offered title fights against Khabib and Tyron Woodley and
St.
all these
Pierre.
top contenders, and he just refuses to fight because he knows the second he shows the tiniest amount of interest, his stock's going to go up higher. And one day he's going to cash in just like he cashed in for the rematch. He's going to cash in again, and it's going to be a Conor fight. But I think he's going to be wise enough to cash in another time as well, besides Conor fight.
You think so, eh?
Yeah, I think he'll draw somebody else in. I will be surprised. Maybe he would get St. Pierre.
St. Pierre
Um,
turned it down though.
yeah, I know, but you know how things change, man. Checkbooks grow, bank accounts get smaller,
Yeah,
people waste money, and zeros get added. You
true.
know, you know how it is, right? I mean, some of these guys complaining for a long time, like Stipe Miocic, or not. I shouldn't say he was complaining, but a lot of guys, like I remember Stipe Miocic just recently saying against Cormier that he was very happy, finally happy with what he was getting paid. You know what I mean? So even
Oh,
some of the guys at the top of the sport are still, you know, trying to get better, you know, paychecks than what they're getting. So anytime Dana White and them put down some money, I think anything's possible.
yeah. Well, yeah, you have something there for sure. Diaz is definitely motivated by a big money fight. There's no doubt about it. I think that's the whole reason he's held out for another fight with Connor because that is his big money fight. And so I think that is his play at some point or another. Um, But Diaz, I mean, you're right. He's remained relevant without even fighting, and part of that is due to the big following that him and Nick have. A
Yeah,
lot of people love those
yeah,
guys, just like they love Connor.
yep.
And good on him for holding out. I think it was the right move ultimately, and I do think his price will rise. I mean, we'll see what happens with him and Dustin Poirier.
If
If
that fight
Connor
happens,
wins and he
hopefully.
loses, that's not good for a trilogy. I'll just say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and hopefully that fight between him and Poirier happens. And just quickly, before we got a couple minutes left here,
Yep.
I'm curious. Just quickly, this welterweight title fight between Tyron Woodley and Darren Till, we've talked about it before. But if
Yeah.
you had to bet, you know, your house or something on this fight, and you had one bet to take on the money line, who would you roll with, Tyron Woodley or Darren Till?
Man, it's Darren Till's a huge dude, and I like the way he fights for his size, but Tyron Woodley is a monster, and
Yeah,
I just you're gonna have to be a complete fighter, a tough guy, and a great athlete to beat Tyron Woodley, I think, in a fight. To be honest, I don't even know what would happen if GSP and Tyron Woodley fight, to be honest.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's also Tyron Woodley's a monster, but he's a cautious monster, and
Yeah.
and those guys, he's so hard to expose, and and Till's got that reach and that size. I think a lot of it's going to come down to see if Till can make weight,
Yeah.
and after missing weight in his hometown, you got to kind of wonder if he's not going to be able to make weight in his hometown. He's going to be able to, what else can get you that amped besides fighting in your hometown, right?
Oh,
So,
you're.
but
Yeah.
this is for the title. So, maybe it'll work out. I really don't. I hope it does because the fans deserve to see this fight. And there's a lot of people who think that the welterweight division is kind of log jammed at the top, and until this fight is done, nothing's going to move forward. Tyron Woodley's been out of action for a while. We don't really know what we're going to get out of him. Hopefully, it'll be what we have been getting from him. But he's been
Yeah.
sidelined for a while too. And man, what a to come back against a guy like Darren Till. Man, that's nasty. I mean, that talk about a nasty camp. Your first fight in however long. I mean, God, that he hasn't fought since July of 2017 when he beat Damian Maia. I mean,
Wow.
that's over a year on the sidelines, and you got to come back against Darren Till.
Yeah.
Have fun. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's a tough. That's tough. But you know
that's
what? He's so gifted. Um, and he's got ways to win. He can win standing. He can win taking you down. He can, he's a tough matchup for Darren
yeah,
Till. Anybody else who wants to fight him.
absolutely. And with that, we will wrap up the fourth episode of All Five Rounds. Check out. We're going to be stretching out to see get some content on YouTube, possibly Periscope, iTunes, Apple, Stitcher, things like that in the future. Obviously, we're going to keep coming at you with tons of different episodes, sporadically as we do. You can check out our stuff on my Twitter account at Above Full Tie or Darren's Twitter account at Daren Loucks. And you can hit both of us up on Facebook. I'd like to thank my co-host, Daren Loucks, for joining me on this fine evening.
Thank you.
And until next time, this has been All Five Rounds.